Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Center for Spiritual Living Victoria Online. My name is Carrie Hunter, and I am the Senior Minister and Spiritual Director of the Center. And it's lovely to have you here with me today. I'm so happy that you tuned in. My talk today is running toward life. And as I was thinking about that in the past week, I was thinking a lot about Wayne Dyer. I think what really started it was that I received an email from his daughters, Sage and Serena. And I mean, I'm not on their personal email list. It was kind of a blanket email that went out to a lot of people. And they are channeling their father along with someone else. And I found that so interesting that they continue to teach their father teaching through them after his passing now a few years ago. And always felt very connected to him. And I think that one of the reasons was that, well, first of all, I read all of his books, and I have all of his books. And I really related to everything that he said, everything that he wrote. But also in I think it was his second last book, I Can See Clearly Now, I realized that we each shared some common experiences, actually, a lot of them. We knew some of the same people. We had the same feelings about them, the same love for certain people that we had met along the way in our lives. And it was always just oh my, can't wait to meet this man. And I always felt that I would. The island of Maui, where he spent many, many years of his life, and certainly his last days, is my favorite place on earth. And I've spent a lot of time there in my lifetime. And I always thought that I would one day, and it was going to be sometime soon at the time, I would take a trip to Maui and I would go and knock on his door. I knew where he lived, and he lived in a condo building on Ka'anapali Beach in Maui. I also had read that he used to walk every morning or run on the beach, and there was a place he liked to sit and meditate and sometimes write. And he would meet people along the way that recognized him, and he'd take them back to his home and make them some tea, and they would talk, and he'd give them books. Just very generous with his time, very kind, really knowing what his calling was and following it. So I thought that I would knock on his door, and not with the expectation that I would be invited in for tea, but that would be lovely. But I wanted to invite him to come to Victoria to speak. I just really felt it would be wonderful for our center to do that. And it was only after he passed that I read that he never turned anybody down in later years, provided the time was available for him. He wouldn't charge anything. He would let other organizations make money from his coming to speak because he had all that he needed. He said he never needed anything else. Wayne was himself what he asked others to try to be, a no-limit person. He was very giving. He was connected with the divine in every way and did so much. And the second thing that I wanted to ask him to do was to rewrite the Science of Mind textbook, which we use in our centers, because I felt that he could do it justice in a contemporary language. So many people these days find it very difficult to understand until they really get into the teaching. And let's face it, people need to understand it right away so that they can continue on with the teaching. And as I was contemplating this the other night and thinking that I was really quite sorry that he had never done that, all of a sudden the message came to me, well, of course he did. He rewrote it. It wasn't a conscious rewriting of it, but he was familiar with Dr. Holmes' work, Ernest Holmes, our founder. And every book that Wayne Dyer wrote included in it information that we teach in Science of Mind. Basically, how you practice it. His book, if you believe it, you will see it, is such a prime example of that. But in every book, there are wonderful stories and exercises and so on that we can do to be in this place where we are completely connected with the divine and where we manifest our best lives that way. And there are people who might say, well, no, he never did rewrite it. And I didn't mean that in a literal sense that he rewrote it. As I said, it wasn't conscious. I mean, truly, one could say that everything that needs to be said spiritually or written spiritually has already been written, has already been spoken. It's just that we all have a different way of speaking the truth, what we believe to be the truth spiritually. And I think that Wayne did that in a magnificent way. And he also came to mind because I always think of him as somebody who was running toward life, never ran away from it. From the time that he stood on his father's grave and forgave his father for all the pain and suffering that Wayne had felt in his life as a result of his father. When he forgave him, his life turned around. That's when he left his post as a professor at a university and embarked upon his own as an author and one of the most revered spiritual speakers in the world. Uh, if you want to look up on Google information about Wayne Dyer, you will find all of the accolades there, all of the wonderful things that were written about him. And when he talked about people and the way that we are, he said basically there are two kinds of people, and we have a choice about which we're going to be. He said, one kind of person is a deficient person. And he said, that person was always living in the past, always wanting more in life, always thinking that they would be happy if they had more. And they may have been, had vast amounts of money. They could have been millionaires, billionaires. They might have had many homes in many beautiful places. They might have had their own private yacht, their own private jet, and so on. Relationships, glamorous lifestyles, what some might call glamorous lifestyles. And yet they were never satisfied with that. They always felt that they needed more. Or if it was someone who was living in poverty consciousness in a deficient way, then that person would constantly be wanting more, thinking that it was impossible, feeling hard done by because they didn't have all of the things they needed. And many times expecting that somebody else was going to give it to them. Somebody else was going to make it happen. And of course, what we know is that it's always an inside job. And then there was the other kind of person that Wayne called the no limits person. That was the person who was happy through anything, no matter what their circumstances might be. Even when they were going through extreme difficulties, health challenges, whatever, they knew that they could find a gift in it somewhere and that they would find that gift. It might take some time, but they would find it. And one of the things that I've certainly experienced is that whenever I'm going through some challenges, the gift comes a lot faster than it used to since I've been deeply immersed in my spiritual life. And I was reading a story, true story, about a minister named Joan Katsu. She was completely devoted to ministry. She was devoted to God. She did her spiritual practice every morning for 45 minutes, which is approximately what I do. Sometimes it's a bit longer, but typically about 45 minutes. I pray and I meditate. And then sometimes with my practitioner class, we have, when we're in class, we get together every morning at 10 o'clock and pray and meditate together as well. So that kind of amps things up, and it always makes me feel so connected. I just feel that presence within, and it's so powerful. But I slip back into the more person, the person who wants more, or I slip back into deficiency from time to time. I have my human moments. I'm not this perfect, no limit person that Wayne Dyer was, but I certainly aim to become that. And Joan Katsu, who had this good spiritual practice, dedicated minister, spent all of her time in service to her church, to her people, um, everything that they needed, doing whatever it was that they needed, always serving others, whether it was at her church or some other way in life. That's what her life was all about. And she felt completely supported, completely protected by the divine because of her spiritual practice. And she was having an annual checkup one day, and to her horror, the doctor told her that she had cancerous cells on the surface of her uterus. Well, she was in shock. She didn't hear anything else he said. She just could not believe that this could happen to her. And this happens to a lot of ministers. You know, if we become ill with anything, anything from a common cold to COVID to, to something serious, um, we we might be saying, well, why is this happening to me? I don't believe in this stuff. Why is this happening to me? And that's basically what Joan was doing. Anyway, she had to have massive, well, I shouldn't say massive, she had to have serious surgery. She had to have a complete hysterectomy. And typically that takes about 6 weeks to recover. But Joan wasn't going to listen to that. In 7 days, she was on a plane flying to New York City to join a group of 4,000 people to listen to the Dalai Lama. And what she came away with that the Dalai Lama had said was that one should meditate for 4 hours a day. Well, I can see everybody just sort of turning off the switch when they're told that they need to meditate 4 hours a day. And Joan turned off that switch, but she said she knew that Jesus meditated 2 hours a day. I have no idea how she knew that. I don't recall ever reading that Jesus said that, but somewhere along the way she read that or she heard that. She knew that, and so she decided she would give it 2 hours a day, and she did. And she said what happened to her after a few months was that she dove into a place inside that was so holy that she could not even describe it. She knew at that moment that she was completely, in every way, connected to God, that God was fully alive, fully expressing in, as, and through her. And that's what we all need to know, what we all need to recognize. And we'll get there however we get there, if we really want to. The thing is that we have a choice. We always have a choice. And when we make our spiritual practice a regular one and don't give it up for a moment, when we make it the most important thing in our day, when we start our days that way, we feel ourselves becoming closer and closer and closer to the divine within, understanding it better. And we move into a place of no limit, no limits, of joy, of gratitude. And what we begin to realize is that, poverty doesn't bring us closer to God. There are people who believe that, to be godlike, we must be poor. And that's not the case at all. There's some old time religion about that, that it's harder for a rich man to get to heaven than for a camel to pass through the eye of a needle. And of course, we tend to grow up thinking that there's no way a camel could pass through the eye of a needle. Well, actually, in Jerusalem, there is a gate that is called the Eye of the Needle, and a camel can pass through it. But the person who owned the camel had to take the load off the camel and put it down and lead the camel through and then bring the load through and reload afterward. A little bit different from the teeny tiny hole in a needle that we think about, the eye of a needle. I know people who have phenomenal wealth, who are absolutely incredible people. They do so much for humankind. And then I know people who have a lot of money, who basically don't do much for others at all. Oprah Winfrey, she said when she got to $750 million, she said, when anybody gets to that amount, you can't spend it. It's more than you can ever spend. She said, so, just the interest on it, you can give it away. And she does a lot of humanitarian work, as everybody knows. And I apologize for that noise that you likely just heard. I have my window open on this beautiful day, and a plane just flew right past my window. I almost felt like I could wave at the passengers within. Anyway, I think I mentioned last week, Bill Gates said that soon he would not be on the Fortune 500 list. You know, he said that he had just committed $20 billion to charity, to his foundation in the next few years. $20 billion. It's a lot of money. And he said he would be continuing to give his money away because he knew how important that was. He didn't have to have massive wealth in his life. Yeah, he knew what that was like. And he didn't want to have all of that money just sitting there for his own purposes. He wants to give it to others and to do good works with it. I know, you know, I personally know a couple of billionaires who are doing that. They're not leaving all their money to their kids. They're leaving their kids, you know, a few $1,000,000 to help them with their lives, but they're not leaving them with massive wealth. You know, they're going to let them figure that out for themselves. Instead, they're going to help the rest of humanity with it. And so, you know, we would call them no limits people, those who have a lot of money and are not looking for more. They know that they have everything that they need, and they're so happy to share it. And it has to be the same way with people who are very limited with their wealth as well. You know, people who are even below the poverty line who give. They give of themselves, they give of their time, their talent, their treasure. You know, people who have low incomes, who give, who tithe to their churches, who give to charities. You know, their gifts are as big as, and in some cases more than, those of very wealthy people, because they are giving them from their hearts. And sometimes it might even be at some personal sacrifice. I know people who do that. And so when we are in complete alignment with God, when we are no limits people, we see the gifts in our struggles, but also we know that we can experience greater joy, greater love, greater abundance in our lives. And the question is, how do we do that? You know, Kathy Ann Lewis in Seattle, wonderful minister at the Seattle Center for Spiritual Living, recently said in a telephone message that she thinks that there are 3 lanes to God. The first lane is all I need is God. Don't need anything else, and I'm not going to ask for anything else. And so, you know, those could be the people who are just sitting there thinking, okay, well, God will take care of everything. I don't have to ask for anything. And I just need to be content. I need to just feel like I'm in a state of grace. And very often, I'm not saying that that's bad, I'm just saying it's different. And very often, what does come along with people like that, some of us like that, is that there will be some sort of an emergency in life with family or with a friend where we would really like to help financially, and we're not able to do so. We haven't been asking God for assistance, and when we pray for the highest and best. But we're not asking for anything specific. And I remember I used to liken it to going to a fast food drive-through. Let's use McDonald's as an example. You know, and you get up to the window and you're really hungry. You get up to the window and there's a line behind you, and the person on the speaker asks what you would like, and you just sit there and you don't say anything. You know, you're not sure what you really want, and you're trying to make up your mind, and the person says, "Are you there? You know, what is it that you would like?" And you're not saying anything. It's just this kind of and then asks again, and finally says, "You know, will you please move along? There are other people in line." and you move along without getting the food that you want because you haven't ordered it up. All the other people are going to order it up, but you didn't. I mean, I'm using that as a metaphor. We really need to be conscious of this. And so, the all I need is God doesn't necessarily provide me with the Big Mac or whatever it is that, again, metaphorically, that I want in my life. And Kathy Ann says the second lane is that we learn spiritual principles and we learn how to make our lives blissful and happy and prosperous. And we use those principles. You know, we know how to visualize things. Uh, an example, someone in my congregation sent me an email, I guess it was Saturday morning, and I had sent out a prayer request for someone who was having a very serious blood pressure problem, blood pressure 220 over 167. And this person is a student of mine. And she said, I was really trying hard to do five-step prayer, just the way we've been taught to do it. But she said, all I could do was, I just saw this giant thermometer. And she said, I could see the mercury on it that was up almost at the top. And she said, as I was watching it, it was just slowly, slowly, slowly coming down, slowly coming down. And I said, congratulations. You've just passed science of mind. What a perfect, perfect thing to do. The visualization that makes it happen because you hold your focus upon it. So people who are in lane 2 are generally pretty happy and they're content with their lives, and they know that they can manifest things in their lives, and they know they can help others in whatever way, whether they have money or not. You can certainly help them with prayer. They can help them in other ways with service, but typically they have abundant lives, and abundance doesn't always mean having a lot of money. And then Kathy Ann said lane 3 is that you just fall in love with the divine. It's a relationship. You allow it to blossom. And you live in that. Life is a walking prayer. Life is a walking meditation. You are always connected. You always feel that connection because you do your spiritual practice faithfully. And she said, remember what Jesus said. It is my Father's, what is it? It's my Father's good grace to give you the kingdom. Ask and ye shall receive. Whatsoever you ask in my Father's name will be given unto you. And so it is fine to ask. And if we don't feel that it is, then it means that we're feeling that we're not worthy. Beloved child of God, that's who you are. That's what you are. This holy presence lives, moves, and has its being in, as, and through you. How can you be unworthy? You are a container of God's stuff. You're a container of everything that is whole and perfect and complete in life. The thing is that many of us find that hard to believe. But when we do, when we really get it, and we get it through our dedicated spiritual practice, when we get it, lives change. We become happier. We live in what Joseph Campbell called bliss. We follow our bliss. We're able to do so much for others. When I talked about Joan Katsu, she realized that she gave all of herself away. She didn't do anything for herself. And it's like that old oxygen mask on the airplane, you put it on yourself first when there's an emergency so that you can help others. And so in the same way as we help others in our own lives, in our own spiritual way, however that expresses, we also need to be turning that inward. We need to be looking at ourselves in a way where we know that we're deserving of a wonderful life as well. And we're deserving of having good things in our lives and good experiences in our lives. I have a very dear friend who lives in Rome. He's a writer, director, um, author, producer, filmmaker, really an extraordinarily talented man. And I remember Andrea once saying to me, you know, you always work so hard. When are you going to start running toward life instead of running away from it? And as I said earlier, I felt that Wayne Dyer was somebody who ran toward life. Joan Katsu became a person who ran toward life, and her life changed. She still was able to help so many people, but she lived a happy, healthy, is living a happy, healthy, abundant life. And when Andrea said that to me, he also said, when you do, when you start running toward life, it will be like the Olympics, and I will be holding the torch. He was very poetic. And I didn't really listen to that. It was 30 years ago that he said that to me. But it's taking me a long time. I guess I'm a slow learner, but I'm feeling really committed to doing that. Yes, I do my spiritual practice. Yes, I feel connected with the divine. I realize I don't ask for much for myself. And so I'm turning that around right here and right now. And I invite you to do the same. I invite each of you to know the divinity within yourselves, the deep, beautiful holiness that lives there, and to run toward life. And it will be like the Olympics. And you'll be a gold medalist. And God and I will be holding the torch. And so it is. Bless you all, you wonderful people. I'm so happy to share this time with you. And if you ever want to drop in to see us in person, we're at the Cook Street Village Activity Center at 380 Cook Street in Victoria. And just in case you think that it's a health center and not a spiritual center, because of the sign that is there, please just go through the front door on Sunday mornings and go down to the auditorium, and you'll find us there, and you'll find people there who will greet you and show you the way as well. And we would love to see you. We would love to experience a service with you. We have wonderful musicians, and we have a meditation service that starts at 10:30 in the morning in the lounge, and then our regular service, our celebration service, begins at 11 a.m. in the auditorium. So we would love to see you there. And then, of course, afterward, we always have coffee and tea and goodies and lots of conversation. Our center is a welcoming center. The people who attend are so friendly and helpful in every way. We just, embrace the thought of you being there. And we thank you for the gifts that you send us, either through PayPal on our website, www.cslvictoria.org, or by e-transfer, donate at cslvictoria.org. You receive a tax receipt for those gifts at the end of the year, but you really make a big difference in the life of our center as we grow it and expand and reach out to the world. Because we are a tithing center as well. We know that we can never outgive God. And as we give, we receive. And as you give, you will receive. And so it is. Have a wonderful week. I'm going on holidays for a couple of weeks. And so I won't see you until I get back. But I'm looking forward to that. And I hope that you're enjoying a wonderful summer wherever you might be. Bye for now.